There's a footy in there, a dual international as well. He's played lots of footy games and has so many stories to tell.
Oh, stop that racket. It's story time with Matt Rogers.
Oh, wow. I got an intro for that. We are locked away and Chloe thought, how can we fill time on the radio?
I've got way too much time on my hands, obviously.
Well,
open wide, come inside.
So, and am I now expected to tell a story?
Yeah, it's your turn to tell a story. Well, I thought because you've had such an illustrious career being a dual international, you've travelled all around the world, you've played for the biggest teams in Australia at the highest level. You've met some pretty amazing people.
I have.
And I would think that you'd have some great stories.
I do.
Well, do you have one that you would like to share today?
Well, yeah, I guess I can share I've met the Queen.
Yes.
Yes, I have met the Queen.
How did that come about?
Well, it was quite an interesting story. And then what happened when I met the Queen was probably even, it was an interesting scenario. Let me just put it that way. So it was in 2002. It was my first Wallaby tour. So I just left rugby league for the first time and went over to rugby and. We had our spring tour, which is, your 4-week tour with the Wallabies, and you go over to Europe. And we went via Argentina. We went and played the Pumas at River Plate Stadium, an amazing stadium where River Plate play in Argentina, obviously. Played that test match, and with a minute to go, I had a really bad injury. I got a rib cartilage injury, and the way that the tour works at the end of the year for the Wallabies is that there is a pool of money, and that gets divided evenly amongst all the players that are on tour. But you've got to be fit enough to play.
Right.
So if you're not going to play, all you're doing is you're eating into the money that
other people
could be getting. That's right. So if you're on tour and you're injured. People look at you like, man, what are you still doing here? Like you shouldn't be here. But so I got injured in the last minute of the first week of the tour. It's a 4-week tour. The following week we would go to Ireland for a week, and the following week was to London and then I think we finished in Wales. After week 1, I'm injured. I'm laying on the doctor's bed after the game. I could barely breathe. I was in that much pain. It was a really bad torn rib cartilage. And the doctor just happened to be a good friend of mine and a good friend of my family's. He played football with my dad. And I'm laying there and he looks at me and he goes, I said to him, am I any chance of playing? And he goes, no chance.
No chance, breakdance.
No chance. And he said, do you want to stay on tour? I'm like, yes. And he goes, he said, I'll tell him you're a chance for the last game. And I said, am I? And he goes, no, you won't be right for 6 weeks.
Oh my gosh, your team would have hated you.
Well, what happened was we went to Ireland the next week. And Ireland, I'd never been to Ireland, so I wanted to go and experience Ireland. It's just an amazing country. The people are great. Any Irish people out there will attest. Like they're just, I mean, if you've ever been there, it's just it's an amazing city. And I took full advantage of my week off because I couldn't do anything. Like a rib cartilage injury means you are not doing any training. You can't move, like you can barely breathe. I managed to sort of waddle around town and check things out and all that sort of stuff with the help of, the doctor.
So you're sightseing while the rest of your team are training?
Literally.
Oh.
After that week, my nickname became Kentucky. They started calling me Kentucky Rogers, not Matt Rogers. So the following week, so I'm still on tour here, and so there's another week down. Money gets paid. I get my share.
Yep.
Everyone's looking at me like, you feel good about taking that money? I'm like, yeah, I'm a chance. Last week, I'm a chance.
The doctor said.
And they knew because I just couldn't move. So we get to London, and our liaison comes to us and says, so I've got an opportunity to go and meet the Queen. I've got to take 6 people. Do you want to come? I'm like, well, I've got nothing else to do. I'm good to go. I didn't have to go and train or anything. And so there was a few other players that came along. And a lot of the team had already met the Queen because they just won the World Cup.
Hang on a sec. We're going to go to a song. You're going to have to stay tuned to hear the rest of this. We'll be back in just a moment with when Matt meets the Queen.
I was on a roll then.
You can continue to roll on after this song. If you've just joined us, we are amusing ourselves listening to Matt's story about meeting the Queen. Where were we?
So I get this opportunity to go to Buckingham Palace. Like this is not just, meeting the Queen at a function. This is going to her house. Inside, Buckingham Palace, which, you know, I'd visited as a kid. You know, you see everywhere. So I'm pretty pumped about this. So, you know, I was shocked that, you know, not everybody was keen, but like I said, the boys had just won the World Cup in '99. They met the Queen and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of them had met her a few times. So I'm like, right, I'm in, I'm on here. So in we go to Buckingham Palace. We drive through the gates. Like,
Wow.
when I say, like, it's surreal. Like, you drive past those beefeater guys. Is that what they're called? Beefeaters?
I think so.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
The ones that stand still.
Yeah, the ones that
They don't
stand
move.
still. I don't think they're beefeaters.
Or they're called something else.
Yeah, they're called the furry
Stand
hat
still
guys.
eaters.
I don't know what they
Furry
are.
hat guys.
But the beefeaters are not those guys. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, we drove past all those guys.
The other ones are vegans, are they?
I don't know. Oh, cha-ching. Anyway, so we drive in. I'm out the back of, like, you drive through into the courtyard. We walk into the palace, and we just walk. It's just as beautiful as you can imagine. It's a palace, you know. The artwork, the carpets, it's just surreal. You know, I'm in the palace. Anyway, we end up in this room where, you know, the Queen obviously goes on a regular basis for meetings of this nature. There's other people in there. There's, you know, probably about 10 to 15 other people in there from, you know, maybe, you know, other sports or other whatever. We had 6 people in our party. So that was sort of like we were the last to arrive. And the room was probably as big as, you know, 2 or 3 good-sized lounge rooms, you know, put together just for people to understand how big this room is. So it wasn't huge. There's 20 people in there. And we'd just get offered tea and scones.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. I mean, literally.
Was it Earl Grey or English
I don't know.
breakfast?
I heard something about where Earl Grey came from, like the tea.
Yeah. And it wasn't from there?
No, I don't think it's like got anything to do with the royal side of things, maybe. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Sounds like it should.
It does.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I don't know. I just took what I was
Tea
given,
and
and I was
scones.
grateful for it. I'm sitting in this back corner, like I'm injured, right? So I'm sitting in this back corner of this room. I'm the only one sitting down. And I'm looking out over the gardens of Buckingham Palace, just thinking, wow, this is in the middle of London. Like, this is someone's house, you know. I mean, yeah, it's a palace, but this is the Queen's house, and I'm here. I'm like just living the dream.
I'd
right?
go in a bathroom and look in all the drawers.
I went to the bathroom.
Did you check in the drawers?
I don't think it was her personal bathroom.
Oh.
I wouldn't have done that. But I'm sitting down, and as I'm sitting there drinking my cup of tea, daydreaming over how surreal this situation is, the Queen's aide comes in and he starts giving us instruction on how to meet the Queen.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, it wasn't like you're just meeting your neighbour. Like, this is the Queen of England, so there was instructions how to address her. You know, like don't say Her Majesty, don't call her Queen.
G'day, love.
Don't call her love or Dal. It's Mum.
There's a gun.
Mum. M-A-M.
Mum.
Speak clearly. Like, that was one of the things, that speak clearly. You know, it's called the Queen's English.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, speak clearly. You're representing your country now. You know, you're meeting the Queen. It was a big deal, and I'm freaking out. And the last instruction that he gave us, I just remember it clearly, was, and please don't feed the corgis.
Oh, that is a red flag right there.
Well, for starters, I was excited for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
One, that there were corgis, because I was always thought,
How many?
there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. There was like about, I can't remember,
Maybe half a dozen?
at least.
Really?
Oh, yeah, at least. Oh, there would have been probably 10.
You'd
Yeah.
hope they'd be toilet trained in
Mate,
Buckingham
these
Palace.
things were the most groomed, the most beautiful looking dogs. These things came like flying in the room, and it was before the Queen. So
Right.
like, they're just running around saying hello to everyone. I can see why they were sort of saying don't feed them, because they're just hanging out, you know, and
Yeah.
everyone's sort of got scones and stuff. And
Oh, no, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to have to go to a song, and you guys are going to have to wait until after the song to hear about what happens next. I have a little bit of an inkling. Oh, man, you have missed out on one hell of a story so far. Let me just set the scene for you. Matt Rogers in Buckingham Palace with some corgis about to meet the Queen. Where were we?
I was the only one sitting down in the back corner, so they tended to migrate over to me because they're short little dogs, and I was
Right.
sitting down. So they sort of came over to me and they looked into my eyes, and they sat and they sat
I
up.
just know where this is heading.
They sat up like I was one of them, and we were having a conversation around the coffee table, and it was like they were speaking to me, and I was forced to feed them. So they've got a power. They've got a power, these dogs. I'm telling you. And that's why they have to tell you not to feed them, because these dogs, they're good. So anyway, I relented and I fed the corgis.
Oh, my goodness.
And we got on real good, the dogs and I. We were having a great time. I'm patting them. None of them smelt like a dog at all. Anyway, after a little while, we're sitting there and then the Queen comes in. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not good. So I jump up and I run away from the dogs. And
Oh, no.
I'm like, oh, this is, I'm freaking out a little bit because I've just been feeding the dogs. And I've actually even found out that you shouldn't give dogs bread since then. No, I don't. But so I felt bad. On top of that, I'm giving them like scones. So anyway, we have to form this semicircle, and I'm on the far side of where the Queen started. So she's going around just meeting people, and she's like introducing herself to them in like 5-10 seconds max per person.
Yeah.
So she gets to me. 3 of my teammates are on the other side. They've already met her, and they're looking at me now. The Queen's back's to them. So they're looking at me, and they're sort of, trying to make me laugh. And,
Good old Kentucky over there.
Yeah,
They're still calling you Kentucky.
They were. They were angry by this stage because I'd already taken 1 week of pay out of their pockets, and I'm now deep into week 2, and I'm meeting the Queen. So they're not happy. And, no chance of playing at this stage. Definitely not playing. And the Queen gets to me, and she gets introduced to me as, I'm Matt Rogers, and she's like, oh, Mr. Rogers. I'm like, oh, yeah, yes, Mum. Yeah, how are you?
Reputation preceded you.
Yeah, I know. Well,
she knew who you were.
Of course. No, I'm sure she was told, right? So, either told, or this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, I'll explain the rest of this story, and you tell me what you think. So, she asked me, if I'm playing. I'm like, no, I'm injured. She goes, oh, what injury? I said, I have a rib injury. And I'm like, oh, and then she starts giving me advice on my rib injury. And I'm like, oh, but my mates are behind her laughing at me, like, because I've been doing nothing for the last 10 days. She's just, oh, you just need to rest and do nothing and relax and blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
That's exactly what I've been doing. Yeah. Funny that.
And she spent about at least 90 seconds talking to me. And she spent so long with me that all the dogs came over. And I'm starting to freak out. I'm thinking, oh, no, this is not good. The dogs didn't go anywhere near her when she was with everybody else. She stays with me. Now all the dogs come over, and all the dogs start sitting up, like in that way that they did when I fed them. No. And she looks at the dogs, and she looks at me, and she goes, oh, they don't often do that unless they've been fed. I'm like, oh, my goodness. What do I do here? Do I give myself up?
Oh, you can't.
Well, she's already. I mean,
she would have chopped your head off.
Well,
off with your head.
I'm already in Australia. I mean, so I'm thinking I've just got to deny. I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about it. She's like, she sort of nodded, and then looked at me, like, stared at me, and then moved off. I'm thinking that I've thought about this for a long time. I'm pretty confident they're going to have cameras in Buckingham Palace.
Of course they are.
Yeah. So I reckon she knew I fed them. And I reckon that's why she stayed and talked to me.
And who is that?
I reckon she's got a sense of humour, the Queen. I reckon she's thought, I'm going to get this bloke. I'm going to make him sweat. I'm going to get the dogs in here. So she's like been, I reckon that that's a setup, I reckon. Righto, the football teams are coming. Let's get out the bad crockery. Don't put out any of the good spoons because I'll get stolen. And if anybody feeds a dog, tap me on the shoulder because I want to make him sweat. So I'm sure that's what happened. So
what a great story.
Yeah, she stitched me up, the Queen. But it was a great memory.
Oh, I love it. Well, you're going to have to tune in again if you want to hear more of Matt Rogers' stories. That was story time with Matt.
Yes, it
on
was.
Good Taste Brekky with Chloe and family in ISO.